Architecture, sculpture, painting, even the landscape create a vision of a perfect place, a place of fantasy and myth where gods might walk with men. Somewhere, of course, which has never existed in history, it is imagined, yet it has been created out of fragments of the half-dreamt, half-remembered ancient Greece and Rome. The poet Shelley wrote at the beginning of the 19th century, "We are all Greeks. Our laws, our literature, our religion, our arts, all have their roots in Greece. But for Greece, we might still have been savages and idolaters." The human form and the human mind attained to a perfection in Greece which has impressed its image on those faultless productions whose very fragments are the despair of modern art, and which can never cease to delight mankind until the extinction of the race. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Europeans surrounded themselves with the images of Greece and Rome. They created for themselves personal museums which displayed their wealth, taste, and learning, and idealized the virtues of reason, liberty, and justice. In this way, they elevated and even masked their mundane relationships with land ownership and manufacture, trade and empire. And they exported these ideals and the visual language which expressed them all over the world to the Americas, the Indies, and beyond. It is appropriate, then, that these are the first pictures we see in a series on the tradition of Western art. We could have started in the caves of Lascaux or the temples of Luxor. But if there is a beginning, a source to which Western art and thought constantly refers, it is in ancient Greece and Rome. A Greece and Rome that are forever fantasized and idealized, but which are with us wherever we look.
More than 200 years ago, when the founding fathers of the United States were building their new capital here in Washington, they searched for a visual style which would embody their democratic ideals. And they found it in Greece and Rome, in a style which for them, as still for us, embodies harmony, order, and freedom. And from that day to this, the West has built its temples to liberty and justice, and to money and power, in the Greek and Roman style. You can see it in Trafalgar Square in London and in Leningrad in the Soviet Union. At the root of the Western tradition, in architecture, in painting, and in sculpture, is the classical legacy. It's so ingrained in our way of seeing things that most of the time we don't notice when we use it in TV, in commercials, in magazines, in the coins in our pocket, even in a classical head on our credit card. And many of the uses to which we put it no doubt would astonish people from the ancient world. But if an ancient Greek could time travel down to our time and be here now, he would recognize this around us. He would surely feel that in some sense, the West is heir to his civilization.
The power of this tradition and its hold over our imagination make it difficult for us to see the Greeks and Romans as they really were. The Athenians of the 5th century BC, the builders of the temple at Sunion, are often portrayed as superheroes, the creators of democracy and a perfect society.
We must be careful, though, not to idealize them. Like all societies, theirs was imperfect. It was based on slavery. Women had no rights. They were imperialists. And in their darkest moments, as in the bitter Peloponnesian War with Sparta, the Athenians fell prey to irrationality, mass hysteria, strange religious cults, pornography, urban violence, and murderous and unjust acts of foreign policy against smaller states. Things we're all too familiar with in the modern West. But Greek artists and poets understood these things about human nature, and they made their art about those contradictions, about the tragedies and the failures, as well as the achievements.
The sculptures of the Altar of Zeus from Pergamon portray those contradictions in the dramatic manner of the 2nd century BC. But like so much Greek art, the originals have been dismembered and fragmented, scattered around the museums of the world, or buried deep and forgotten. Some works are wonderfully preserved on the site of their origin, but most have been broken and bleached by time. It takes imagination and study to piece together these fragments and try to see them again in the context of the society in which they were produced. Who made these images and objects? For whom and why? What was in the artist's mind and in the patrons, and how were they seen by the surrounding society? We shall be helped in answering these questions by art historians like John Boardman of the Ashmolean Museum, Oxford.